everyone, welcome back to Vegan June and day 7 of what I ate. I had some mini blackberry crumble cheesecakes for breakfast, and then I just made some strawberry nice cream to have with those by blending up one frozen banana in a food processor until almost smooth. I then added in 6 chopped strawberries and blended it again for around 15 seconds. The recipe for these cheesecakes is down below, but I removed them from the freezer a while beforehand so that they softened up a little bit and so that I could add on the crumble topping. And then I served those up with the strawberry ice cream. The weather is so hot now, so it started melting before I could get a decent shot of this. But these were the last 2 cheesecakes, and though I said that they are freezable, I like to use them up while they're still as fresh as possible. And what better breakfast than mini cheesecakes and ice cream? I made some spicy roasted chickpeas as a mid-morning snack, and I first just preheated my oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Then to a large mixing bowl I just added half a can of chickpeas, which were rinsed and drained, a teaspoon of olive oil, half a teaspoon of ground coriander, half a teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of turmeric, half a teaspoon of garlic powder, and some salt and black pepper. I gave that a good stir, made sure the chickpeas were coated really well, and then I placed them on a lined baking tray and popped them in the oven for 20 minutes until they go slightly crispy. You can leave them to cool down a bit, and I find that they go even crispier, and then they'll last you up to 2 days in an airtight container. I find if they're left longer than that, they tend to go soft. They're great to take to work or on the go. It's a great protein snack which is full of energy, and you can also make this in so many different ways using different spices. For lunch I had some chufta lettuce wraps. These are Turkish, and it basically translates to raw meatballs but without the meat. They're actually made with bulgur wheat, tomato paste, nuts, herbs and spices. They're completely vegan, and it's one of the only things I'll actually buy pre-made. We get them from a shop down the road who specify in making these, and they're handmade and they make them fresh every day. They're usually eaten in flour wraps or lettuce wraps. I prefer them in lettuce wraps, so I just take a couple of leaves of lettuce, give them a wash, and then fill them with the meatballs, some fresh lemon juice and parsley. But I also made up some guac. The recipe for this is down below, and I added that into the wraps too, just to make them a little bit more filling. And let's face it, guac goes with so many things. I haven't tried making these myself, but they should be super simple to make. They have so much flavour, they're a little bit spicy, and they can work for so many different things. But you could totally recreate this kind of lunch with the sun-dried tomato and basil balls shown in yesterday's video. I'll have the recipe linked down below. For something really light mid-afternoon, I just had a watermelon, cucumber and mint ice lolly. I made these up the day before, and I started just by cutting up a watermelon into quarters. I then juiced 1 quarter with 1 large cucumber and a handful of fresh mint leaves. I gave that a good stir and then poured it into my ice lolly molds, and it filled 4 of them all together. I then popped that back in the freezer so it had pretty much a whole day to set. And these were so delicious. I find that this juice alone could be quite watery, obviously, and not a lot of flavour comes out of it, but I can't believe the taste that came from these lollies. It was so refreshing and juicy. I often just make a juice as a snack. They're surprisingly filling, and this is basically just a frozen juice. For dinner I made some tomato quinoa with roast vegetable and sausage kebabs and a mustard dressing. I preheated my oven to 180 degrees Celsius and started by cutting up my veg, and so I sliced up some red onion, some cherry tomatoes, some large tomatoes and some green peppers. I then arranged my kebabs. I had pre-soaked my wooden skewers in water, which just stops them from drying out in the oven. And then I slid on slices of my vegan sausages. The recipe for this is down below as well. And the red onion, the larger tomatoes and green pepper. I placed those on a lined baking tray with the cherry tomatoes on the side, which I had also minced some garlic onto, and then I placed those in the oven for 20 minutes. In that time I just cooked up some quinoa, and I made a dressing using 2 tablespoons of agave, or you could use maple syrup, a tablespoon of whole grain mustard and a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. Then once the vegetables were cooked, I added the garlic cherry tomatoes to the quinoa, gave it a good mix around and seasoned it with salt and pepper, and also added in some fresh parsley and chopped black olives. I then served that up, laid the skewers on top and drizzled over the mustard dressing. This was a really great dinner. I've been trying to think of different ways to use my mushroom vegan sausages, and I thought that this would work really great for a summer meal. I usually get asked what I eat at barbecues and ideas for things that can be taken to barbecue occasions, and this would be great for that. You could put the skewers on the barbecue and they'd work amazing on there as well. And then for dessert I made some coconut and strawberry jam cookies or macaroons. For this I just preheated my oven to 180 degrees Celsius, although it was still quite warm from dinner, and then in a large bowl I mixed together 1 cup of desiccated coconut, 1 cup of oat flour, 4 tablespoons of melted coconut oil, 3 tablespoons of agave nectar or maple syrup, a teaspoon of vanilla extract and a pinch of salt, and I mixed that all together well before then adding in 6 tablespoons of coconut milk to form a wet and sticky consistency. I then just lined a baking tray and took a heaped tablespoon of the mix and formed it into like a rough ball in my hands, and then I pressed it down onto the tray and made a thumbprint in the centre. I then added some of my homemade strawberry chia jam, the recipe for this is down below, to the centres, and then I popped them in the oven to bake for 20 minutes. Once they were out of the oven I just left them to cool. They need a little bit longer to set, and then you can eat them. You can store these in a container for up to 3 days. You can store these in a container for up to 3 or 4 days. After that I find that they tend to go a little bit dry. These were really lovely. I actually made some coconut macaroons and shared it on my Instagram about a year ago, but I'd made a chocolate sauce to drizzle over those, but I thought I'd try something different, another way to use my homemade strawberry jam. That's it for day 7 of what I ate for Vegan June. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow for another one. Bye!